reforming zeal of the progressives to make a better, maybe even perfect society is going to come to a screeching halt and, in fact, reverse course significantly when the world around America falls into the greatest war the world had ever seen up to that time. Today we call it World War I, but nobody called it back then because it was inconceivable there would be a World War II. Back then it was either called the Great War or the War to End All Wars. So if you can imagine, they thought this war was so bad nobody would ever wage one again, much less these same people a generation later. It was the most savage and destructive war in all of human history up to that time. Most Americans considered foreign affairs to be remote and irrelevant. If you remember, we just for the first time ventured out in a big way into foreign affairs with the Spanish-American War. But Roosevelt, who's president now with the assassination of McKinley, remember, that's his whole thing. He kind of partially planned the Spanish-American War, and he wants to expand American power and influence in the world. He also understood, as presidents since him have come to understand, that it is in foreign affairs where the president has the most power to act without having to deal with Congress. And so that's actually the most significant area of control for a president. If you ever want to run for president or if you want to judge presidents, I suggest you start with foreign policy first and then worry about domestic policy later, because Congress has most of the control over domestic policy. And in fact, our increasing role in foreign affairs throughout the 20th century and into the 21st century is why the president has become so powerful, both here at home and throughout the world. Roosevelt believes that America should exert its power. He said his philosophy was to speak softly and carry a big stick. And there you see this wonderful cartoon. I believe this is an African proverb. Roosevelt saw the world as the civilized world and the uncivilized world. You may have heard outdated terms like the first world and the third world. Today we tend to say the developed world and the developing world. Understand, this was also the white world versus the non-white world. This was inherently not only culturally biased, but racist. And for some reason, the Slavs, who are kind of the whitest people on earth, if you look at them, didn't count as part of the white world, by the way. These are the people who live where Europe and Asia meet, essentially. The uncivilized world's job, and this was Roosevelt and many other people at the time's view, the uncivilized world's job was to produce raw materials, and then the civilized world would manufacture those raw materials and sell them throughout the world. The civilized world had every right to interfere in the uncivilized world to preserve what they would call order or stability. And of course, the order being that the white nations are on top and everybody else is on bottom. Roosevelt saw his role as the policeman of the world. Here you see this great cartoon where he's the policeman negotiating all these disputes. And really, with one exception, you'll notice, none of these people are white. One of the things Roosevelt will do is he'll further expand the power of our Navy until we have the second most powerful Navy in the world by 1906, behind only Britain. In 1904, Japan surprise attacks the Russian fleet. Japan wants some control in northern China, where Russia has a lot of influence. Japan, like America, wants to build an empire before all the land for empires are gone. Japan sees itself as a Western power. If you look at a map, that may not make a lot of sense, but they see themselves as kind of the European nation of East Asia. And so they're going to get into it with Russia to try to build the Japanese empire. Roosevelt steps into this is the Russo-Japanese War, because he doesn't want to see either side become too powerful and become a rival for America on the other side of the Pacific. America kind of sees the other side of the Pacific as our ocean. We kind of see that as an American pond, so to speak. Roosevelt negotiates a treaty to end the Russo-Japanese War. It's called the Gentleman's Agreement. Japan gets some territorial gains, and Russia gets a stop to the fighting. Russia was losing badly. The much more modern Japanese military was destroying the Russians. There was a secret deal nobody knew about at the time between Roosevelt and the Japanese that allowed America to trade in China if America supported Japanese territorial gains. But the Japanese actually go back on their deal. They don't. They try to prevent us from trading in China. And at this point, Roosevelt will send our Great White Fleet, our big fleet of steel battleships or warships, to tour the Pacific Ocean and Asia. Really, actually, I think they go all around the world and tour. And this is a way of Roosevelt just showing everybody how strong America is now.